All right. So I guess the first overreaction then, since I don't think it's really an overreaction to call Michigan the second best team in the country, is probably um, is Iowa good defensively now? Like, are they actually good? Like, is this team, did they figure it out on that end of the floor? They beat Ohio State at Ohio State 73-57, which is really, really impressive when you consider that Ohio State entering the day was one of the top three offenses in all of college basketball. And they scored
Yeah,
57 points at home to an Iowa team that allegedly cannot get stops against anybody.
I kind of think Dwayne didn't have a good shooting night, and I feel like if Dwayne doesn't have a good shooting night, and Ahrens and these guys aren't like putting up shots and numbers, I mean, EJ Liddell was okay as well tonight. Like they need EJ Liddell, they need Dwayne Washington Jr., they need CJ Walker to have these great nights so they can be the team that they are, and capitalize on certain mismatches and things like that. I just feel like Iowa shot the ball well, and Luka Garza played infinitely better than he has played his game before the games before.
Yeah. So I was having a conversation with someone about this game, and they were like, look, I don't feel any different about Iowa's defense now than I did before because I thought
Yeah,
that this was all about Ohio State missing shots.
yeah,
It wasn't necessarily about Ohio State keeping them from getting the shots that Ohio State wanted to get. It was about them just missing the shots that they wanted. And I think that's fair to a point. But like, also, this is like the third time that we've said that about teams that are playing Iowa. And so I'm going to throw another stat at you. Okay. There's this guy named Bart Torvik who runs a Temple Free Stats website called T Rank that's kind of similar to like Ken Palm in terms of how they use schedule adjusted and pace adjusted efficiency metrics to determine who the best teams are over a certain period of time. And it allows you to look at it based on certain windows in time instead of over just the whole season.
oh gosh,
And
these
in the
guys are.
last 7 games, since Iowa lost at home against Ohio State when they gave up 89 points,
Yeah,
in the last 7 games, Iowa has been a top 10 defense in the country. Top 10. Top 10. And here's my take. And I don't know if I told this to you the other day, but my take on it is that what changed for them is just the presence of CJ Fredrick on the floor. And the reason I say that is one, CJ Fredrick he's not a great individual defender, but he's a good positional guy, right? Like he's not going to make mistakes. You're not going to get wide open layups when he's on the floor. He's probably going to get beaten. He's not going to be able to stay in front of quicker guards, but he's going to make the right rotations. He's going to make the right reads. He's going to be in the right spot on the floor. And that to a point that matters on a team where you got a bunch of guys that do a lot of really stupid shit.
it does.
But more importantly, like he just is so good on the offensive end of the floor. And there's two things that he provides them. One, he does not turn the ball over. We talked about this. He doesn't turn the ball over. And he makes shots, and he's unbelievably efficient. And what it does is it forces the ball to go through the net, right? And it forces them to take the ball out of the basket and that extra half second to be able to get back on defense. And it keeps Iowa from having to play in transition defensively, which is where they really, really struggle. So for my money, like, I don't think that they're great defensively. I think that a lot of the results of these numbers are kind of skewed by some teams having poor shooting nights and the fact that they also played a little bit of a weaker schedule. That said, I think that as long as they play defense at the level they've been playing it recently, I think that that's good enough to get them to a Final Four.
I don't expect them not to get better over the year as well either. Like, I mean,
Yes.
they're not a great defensive team, but they've gotten a little bit better. I don't think that's like a false like thing to say, but I don't know. Like that to say they can go to the Final Four, I can agree with that because they have the player of the year on their team. Not to mention Joe Weezy is getting shots up. Yeah, exactly. And sorry, I can't help but think about that name. That was running in my head the entire time. But no, like if they don't make shots though, then we see, and when they play against good teams, like the scheduling is a very big point. Like when they play against good teams and they don't make these shots, like they can be down like they were to a Michigan or lose to a team like Indiana where they're not shooting the ball well. So it's just one of those nights where Luka can give you a bunch, but if they're not making shots in the perimeter, that's the game. Like,
yeah, like for my money, I think Iowa might be like they're just so incredibly matchup dependent, and I think it's the same thing, kind of similar with Kansas in the sense that if you can take away Garza without selling out on double teams, right? If you can,
yeah,
if you
exactly.
can lock them up one-on-one the way that Hunter Dickinson did, or if you could play like a really kind of disciplined pack line where you're making the double on the catch more or less, and you're able to rotate efficiently out of it, which is like what Indiana does, and you have enough size inside where you can slow them down one-on-one if you have to at times. They become very easy to guard because they don't have guys that can really kill you off the dribble. They have a ton of guys that can make shots, but if you can get there on the shots, you can slow them down a little bit.
Yeah, you just run them off the 3-point line, and that's something that's what Michigan did. I got a chance to watch that game. Like Michigan ran them off the 3-point line, or they forced them to shoot difficult threes. Like, they didn't get any assists that game because like they had to get run off the 3-point line, take 2-3 dribbles. Sometimes they stepped back into threes, sometimes they didn't. They just drove to the basket, one leg floaters from far and contested twos, and they didn't get the normal one more passes they would normally make when they're making these shots and they gap and kick. They didn't have those things because that's not what they normally look for. And not accustomed to getting ran off the line that like, and people staying with them. So if you can do those things, you can make it very difficult for them without having to, like you say, sell out in these double teams on Luka.
How worried are you about Ohio State?
Not really worried at all, honestly. I still think they're going to be, because of the like, EJ Liddell's didn't have like the great. He still made 7 field goals tonight. He is a mismatch, and as long as they play against teams that are going to have bigs out there, like legit bigs, he will. Ohio State will be just fine. And the matter of them winning the game, like they'll be in the game, but will they win the game is going to be dependent on CJ and Walker and Dwayne Washington Jr. Like it's just going to be dependent on them. Because if they have like those kind of similar to what we talked about when we were talking about Texas Tech early in the season, it's just like, they expect Mac McClung to like just get these numbers up, and that's what's going to keep them in the game if they do everything else that they're supposed to do defensively. Vice versa for Ohio State offensively. We know what you're going to give me, Joe Liddell, and we know what you can do in those mismatches and how they can make things work. Now, are Dwayne Washington and these guys going to make these guards, defend and get baskets and then keep the defense fully honest on the perimeter? So then there's no worries. Like EJ Liddell can like take advantage of the mismatch full out because he's going to get his numbers.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of think that, so they've lost 3 in a row, right? Mm-hmm. The first 2 were a little bit fluky in the sense that they played Michigan. They played Michigan tough. And there were some individual mistakes that were a little bit uncommon for Ohio State down the stretch that cost them that win. So I'm not worried about the Michigan one. At Michigan State, look, Michigan State's playing better. Ohio State got a horrible whistle down the stretch. So I'm not that worried about that one either. And then this one against Iowa, like, look, if you're a team that relies as heavily as Ohio State does on 3-point shooting and you can't really guard, eventually the regression monster is going to hit. Eventually you're going to start missing some shots. And I think that's kind of what has happened with Ohio State. So I don't think that they were quite as good as maybe like a top 5 team in the country, but they're still like, they're a top 10 team. That's a threat to the Final Four if they get the right draw. Like they're fine. Like I'm not worried.